let's say I write a story, and you read this said story, but it's not a normal story. See, I wrote the ending of the story first. I wrote the beginning of the story in the middle, and I wrote the middle of the story at the end. You'd be confused, right? I would be confused. So when we write a personal narrative, we have to make sure that we write it in order, right? So if we write first thing, and then the second thing, and then the third thing, and then the fourth thing, and then the end, we know that the reader is going to understand what we mean. But if I'm telling the story about my dog, Dexter, and I talk about him running away first, and then I talk about how much I missed him and loved him, and then I talk about him coming home, and then I talk about how I don't know what I'm going to do without him, and then I talk about how great he was when he was with me, it wouldn't make very much sense, right? Your emotions would be all over the place as you were reading the story. So, when we write a story, we write it with a sequence, a set sequence of events, the order in which those events happened. A personal narrative is going to be written in chronological order, so the order of time that the events took place. We can think about this in a couple of ways. So, your story is going to be the first event, or the first thing that happened, right? The introduction to your story. The second thing is going to be the next thing that happened. And then third, fourth, fifth. Now, we can't just scramble these numbers around or your story wouldn't make any sense. Now, as you're thinking about a sequence and your story being in the correct order, you also need to think about what parts that is of your story, right? What part is part one? Well, part one needs to be the beginning. Part two of your story needs to be your rising action. What is leading up to your problem or to your most exciting part? Part three is going to be your most exciting part or the turning point of your story, your climax. And then point four is going to be your falling action. What happened directly after your climax? What happened directly after the most exciting part when everything changed? And then your fifth part is going to be your resolution or the end of your story. What happened after the most exciting things, after the problem was solved? What came about? What came of you going through this? What changed? So, as you are writing a story, we can't just jump all over the place. You can't write a story about your kitten, but start the story when your kitten was 3 years old, and then somewhere in the middle talk about when your kitten was born, and then talk about when your kitten started eating real food, and then talk about how your kitten liked to snuggle with its mama the day after it was born. You can't jump around, because then your story doesn't make sense. So, when we're writing stories, first we need to plan. And when you plan the events of your story, put it in boxes. Put it in order of sequence, even if you write out on a page as you're planning, even when it's still sloppy. Make sure you're writing those ideas in the order in which it happened. And if you notice in your planning that your events aren't all in order, make sure you put them in order before you write your final story. So, I will see you guys tomorrow.